Hi everyone, what's up? Chelsea fans, I hope you're all feeling good. This is Xavier Mbuyamba, and you're listening to the Blue Day podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that will never end. This is the Blue Day podcast, and for Chelsea fans everywhere, every day is a blue day, and we are going back to Wembley this season. Yes, we are. I am your host, the creator, the man with a face for podcasting, Keith Lawrence, and as you can hear, I'm in a great mood. Joining me today for this week's episode is a man who bleeds blue. He's Chelsea through and through. Returning to the Blue Day podcast, it's Steve Wicks. Steve, welcome back.
Hello, Keith. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah. Happy days. After yesterday afternoon and waking up to blue skies, it was
fantastic. It was meant to be. It has been a great weekend at the moment, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. You know, I'm sure a lot of Chelsea fans would have been a bit sort of, what's the word, not scared, but a little bit apprehensive about yesterday. But the boys were absolutely superb. And to be fair to the coach, his tactics were spot on.
Well, let's crack on with it. What we're going to do for this episode, folks, we're going to talk about the Chelsea result yesterday, the triumphant, I love that word, Steve, triumphant victory against Manchester City, who people were labelling as the best side in Europe. They were going for the quadruple. We screwed all that up we're in the FA Cup final once again. Hopefully this year will be different to last year. Of course, we lost to Arsenal, but we won't mention that. Steve, before we discuss about the game itself, what did you make of the team selection? Because there was a lot of people I saw on social media were very apprehensive about Thomas Tuchel's approach because of the changes he made to the squad. But just to start off with, Steve, what did you make of the team selection before kickoff?
Well, I think he wanted to make us secure. He wanted to make, because Man City passed through the lines very well, and he wanted to make us a very solid unit. I thought, as I said to you before, I thought his team selection and his tactics were absolutely spot on. And I think if we'd have beat Man City 1-0 and they'd hit the post 5 times or they put us under pressure, but there wasn't many times in that game I felt as a Chelsea fan that we were under pressure. And I think Kante, I thought, was absolutely superb yesterday. He led by example. And the great thing I thought was that every single Chelsea player put a shift in. They worked their socks off, and it was a well-deserved win over a team that people are hailing. Not only the best team in the UK, but the best team in the world. They're proud of themselves.
Yes, I mean, as you say, team collective. I mean, people are talking about the away game against Atletico Madrid being an all-round team performance. I thought, based on yesterday's how we played, I thought it was much better because the pressure was on us quite a bit yesterday, whereas against Atletico Madrid, I think people were expecting Madrid to beat us, whereas yesterday, I think looking at how we have been the last few games, people, again, I want to get your thoughts on this, Steve. People have started labelling us as boring. How Chelsea have performed and how Thomas Tuchel has his tactics. People have labelled us boring, which I find staggering considering our clean sheet record. Steve, I just wanted to sort of go with this photo that somebody sent me this morning. And this is great, fantastic stat. Thomas Tuchel's been in charge of Chelsea for 81 days, and already he's beaten Guardiola, Klopp, Simeone, Mourinho, and Ancelotti. His team has not conceded a single goal against any of them. What a stat that is.
That is quite impressive. That is quite impressive. But I'll tell you what, Keith, which was very apparent yesterday, is our goalkeeper made 2 saves the whole game. And they were very ordinary saves. I think that says it all.
There was a lot of question marks about the inclusion of Kepa because people are saying he should never play for the club again. Mendy's our number 1, but we've seen it before. Cup games, Tuchel has played with Kepa. So that wasn't a big surprise for me, but I was surprised with how well he performed. And he looked different, as you could see on the telly, but as a goalkeeper, stature-wise, he looked different. And he looked like he had something to prove.
Yeah, well, he's a young lad in terms of goalkeeping terms.
Yes.
Chelsea have invested an awful lot of money in him. And do you know something, what makes a great coach, in my opinion, is that when not only physically do they make them a better player, but when they mentally make them stronger. And it seemed to me his whole, I think he's taken what I found was that he put pressure on himself with his kicking, and he tried little passes and he tried to be a little bit clever, but he's taken that back to the bone, and he is now looks the part. And let's be fair about it, the investment that we invested in him, it deserves a lot of hard work. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of money. And he looks the part. And as I said, to me, there's a lot of coaches that go out and buy the finished product. And the real good coaches, in my opinion, are the ones that make players better through their coaching, through the work. And he seems to have done that with Christensen. I think I spoke to you last time. He looks a completely different player. Everyone knows what they're doing. And Christensen has got every attribute you could wish to have, apart from, up until now, a John Terry type heart. And if you could put that into him, he would be a very, very good player. But, expectation of what the manager expects is also a very important thing.
I'd like to give a special note to Antonio Rudiger yesterday, because there was times yesterday he looked like a man possessed. In regards to his performance, he did not want to concede a goal at all. He would have done anything to have stopped Man City, and it worked. And he's done that a couple of times under Tuchel this season. And again, we discussed about Frank, last time he was on the show, and obviously he left Rudiger out for a long period at the start of the season, but now Rudiger's come back into the fold. He looks like a leader, and his stature has completely changed that back line. There is no doubt that I think Rudiger can become even better as well. But yesterday's performance, I just thought was just incredible. I mean, I know Man City's, I thought they were missing Aguero. I mean, my thoughts on Jesus, I don't think he's that level compared to Aguero, but I thought they missed him. Sterling seems to be gone off the boil a little bit as well. But Rudiger's performance was just that class.
Yeah, I think, as I've said, with Frank sort of went the Zuma route, didn't he? He played Kurt the majority of the time. And when a new manager comes in, it's a clean slate, and it's who wants it the most. Yeah. And it's people forget that could be the dress rehearsal for the Champions League final. And mentally, if that, please God, happens, it would do us the world of good, because we now know they're beatable. Had we lost that game yesterday, it would have got into our psyche. But now we've beaten them, and we didn't just beat them. We beat them well with a thoroughly deserved victory. And that, to me, if I was one of those Chelsea players sat in that dressing room after the game, to beat Manchester City that way would have felt absolutely beautiful.
You being a defender, Steve, I know we did discuss it before, but we discussed the difference between playing free at the back and then having a sort of a flat back four, or with full backs going forward. But for me, Chelsea looked so comfortable. And I said this when we had Antonio Conte in charge. We looked so comfortable with three at the back. And I feel that while Tuchel is going to be in charge for forever, how long that could be, three at the back just looks so much better for us anyway, because of how our fullbacks bomb forward. You know, Ben Chilwell, it suits him so brilliantly. Reece James, it suits so well.
Yeah. The two fullbacks complement that formation unbelievably. They're the big problem you've got in a four. If you've got two fullbacks that bomb on, it's that little space in between, just behind the fullback, in between the byline, not the sideline and the centre back. It's that space, but with a three, you can cover that space, and that enables the fullbacks to bomb on and not worry about that. And both of them, yesterday were absolutely superb. And I'm pleased for Ben Chilwell as well, because I think he's a very important player for England as well. So he looked very good yesterday. He really did. Perfect.
There was quite a large part of the game where we was controlling possession, but I was very sort of impressed with how we was playing through the thirds. You know, so when we would have the ball starting at the back, we wouldn't just sort of play it long to try for Werner and Ziyech to get it. We would play through each middle, so play it to Jorginho. Normally, Jorginho would play it back, but he was playing it forward. And obviously, under Tuchel, we look a possession-based team. Do you think, though, that there could be moments where we could be over-reliant on possession and not taking enough chances? Or do you think that at this stage of the season, where results are important, for me, more than performances, we have to be more possession-based?
Yeah, well, that game could have been if the first semi-final of the FA Cup, with both teams not playing with a centre forward. And I think this is the way the game is evolving, where people are rotating up front and find themselves as a centre forward, and they're comfortable in that position. And Chelsea yesterday, we did to them what they do to other teams. We won the ball off them. We created things. We kept our cool, looked in behind, nice early balls, as you say about Jorginho. As a midfield player, you can get into a bad habit, and the bad habit is to keep possession. A good habit is to look up, and if anything's on, pass the ball with the ability these players have got as quickly as possible forward. Look forward. And we went through a stage where we were just keeping possession for the sake of keeping possession. But yesterday, we released the ball at the right time, so all of a sudden our front players were in. They were in behind. And two of the goals, the one that was offside and the goal that won the match for us, were us on the break, and it was controlled. It wasn't just a big boot out. It was passed out the back with everyone looking forward early, and the ball was played early, and we were in. And it looked good. I'd still like to see us with a Haaland type player up front, because the big problem we have, yes, we've got clean sheets. Yes, we beat Crystal Palace 4-0, but if you take that 4-0 out of the equation, we should have won games by more goals than we eventually ended up with. And that's quite a dangerous thing sometimes, because you don't always get what you deserve.
You mentioned earlier about the false nine and how sort of City have played with large parts of the season with a false nine. What's your take on this false nine concept? You know, it should be clubs, because of the size of the squads and because of the amount of money invested. Is it a cop-out to have a false nine, or is it more of a tactical genius when it does work out?
Well, I think, Man City have won the league playing that, I would imagine, about 65% of their fixtures with a false nine. And when you've got ability like the top teams have in this country, it can work. Because, listen, if I'm playing against Haaland, that's my responsibility. As a centre-back, I'm marking Haaland. But as a centre-back, you look up and you've got no one to mark. That can cause you a problem, because you're thinking, well, and I thought, Werner, I think everyone thought we signed him as a 9. and he's playing wide. And he, to be fair to him, I'd love to see him go because he works hard. He's unselfish. But now he's creating goals as well. So I think this false nine, I think it's, as I said, the game evolves and different ideas happen. The high line was the first thing that, that sort of came, playing between the lines. These are all new sayings that have come into the game. And Ken Chiletto used to say to me, football is a simple game complicated by idiots. But actually what's happened, it's evolved for these idiots becoming geniuses, and the coaches way. And to be fair, for this country to have 4 teams in the semi-final of both European competitions, and who's to say we're not going to have all 4 teams in the final of those 4 competitions? Please God,
could happen. It could happen.
Could happen. And I wouldn't, Real Madrid are a very good side, but they're not as good as Man City. And what we mustn't do is look at Real Madrid with the aura that they were the Real Madrid that was 2 or 3 years ago, because they're not. And we can, if Liverpool had scored, I felt sorry for Liverpool the other night. I know Chelsea fans will hate me for that. But the fact that they were playing against Real Madrid, they were 3-1 down. They needed everything they could have. 60-odd thousand people in Anfield. The Kop scoring an early goal. And I'd like to see how Real Madrid would have lasted in that game.
Yeah, I remember when the draw came out and it was either Liverpool or Real Madrid, I was quite confident. And a friend of mine asked me why. And I said, I don't fear either of them. I think Liverpool are going through a bit of a transitional period. I think Madrid are not the team that they once were. I believe they're still over-relying on the same players they had near 10 years ago, the likes of Benzema, for example, Ramos. And I believe, and this is from how we played yesterday, if we play, for example, Werner, Hakim Ziyech, that I'd like to mention it quite soon, if we play them and the tactics are spot on, we can beat Real Madrid. I do not fear Real Madrid. I am very confident. And it might sound insane, but I am confident we can beat Madrid over 2 legs.
Yeah, I agree, Keith. I agree. I think that the way we played yesterday, with the belief that's building, and we need to go there and play the same type of way as we played yesterday. Let's be fair about it. Years and years ago, when you went to play Real Madrid, it was a completely different brand of football. They played the possession game. We played the long ball. And 9 times out of 10, we got beaten as clubs. Now we play the same way as they play. Now our league is better and it's stronger. And as I said, I play very similar to the way that we played yesterday in Madrid, and I wouldn't change it too much at home. And I think we can do it. I think we can beat them.
One player he scored the winner, Hakim Ziyech. He's been criticised by Chelsea supporters this season. BBC, when they did the commentary, did mention that he hasn't played for nearly 8 months. When Dutch League was cancelled around the February-March time because of COVID. He picked up a bad injury pre-season, and then I think he came in sort of around about the October time. So he missed quite a lot of football, and he has been criticised. He's been criticised by me on this podcast. I've sort of not been too impressed with him sort of this season. But yesterday looked the old Hakim Ziyech, if I could use that phrase. He looked like the Hakim that was a star player for Ajax yesterday. He was seeing the space in between the midfield and the defence, and he was just everywhere yesterday. And his movement and his technique with controlling the ball and just having a quick look, I thought was exceptional.
Yeah, I think he looks a good footballer, and Havertz looks the same. But what I will say, and people have got to take into consideration, is this isn't a normal season. Usually it takes time for players to get used to the pace and the power of the Premier League. And it takes them time. What these boys have come into, and Werner's the same, they've come into a congested fixture list where they're playing 3 games a week, and all of a sudden there's game after game after game after game, and they're finding it hard. And really, when you look at Havertz and Ziyech, physically, they're quite slight. They are, and they're young, and it's going to take time. And I think what's happened over the last year, has made it probably the hardest period of time to settle into, the Premier League. And the best of these players will come next year when it's normal, and hopefully, please God, we're back to normality. You'll see a big, big difference.
I still believe they'll come good because of their talent. Werner's arguably Germany's best attacking player. Havertz is, a bundle of potential. There's no way that these players, I believe, will flop. And as you say, it will take time. This is one of the most craziest of seasons. The fact that West Ham are near the Champions League places just tells you everything you need to know that this is a bonkers season.
Don't be controversial. Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. But again, the one thing I will say, with the way the West Ham fans were behaving, having a go at everybody, slagging off the team, with a crowd, would they have got to where they are?
That is a good point.
Would the atmosphere have got to everybody, and it would be a totally different thing? It's a weird. Look at Sheffield United. God.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Last year they were absolutely superb, and everyone was raving about them. Now they've been relegated with
second season syndrome, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it is.
One thing that stood out for me, even when we scored the goal and Man City, when they put on Foden and Gundogan, even when we still had the ball, we still looked quite superb. We didn't look afraid. We didn't sort of look like we were going to make a mistake. And I know, again, football's a crazy game, but it just amazes me that how even with 10 men, we conceded 5 against West Brom. We've near enough the same team based on how we've performed as a team and as a unit. It just sort of, again, as you say, this season's complete and utter bonkers.
Yeah, if you look at the 7-2 Aston Villa, there's been some weird results. But what I will say, and again, you've got to go back, is when we got beaten 5-2 against West Brom, how the manager, the coach, coaches the team and speaks to the players and gets them back on track. He's obviously done a very good job, because who would have thought that here we are sat there on this lovely Sunday afternoon, and we're in the semi-final of the Champions League and the final of the FA Cup. Yeah. So he's done a very good job at getting the players' minds back on the job, making sure they're not mortally wounded by that result. And that's also the players as well. The leaders of that group will be the ones that will pick people up and say, come on, that's never going to happen again. Let's get going. And it's a credit to everyone at the club.
Steve, you sort of did touch on the hammering and the response from coach and the players. When you was in the dressing room and, for example, your team perhaps got a right good beating, what was the sort of the coach's mindset like when you was in the dressing room and you'd come in after the final whistle? Was the coach effing and jeffing, shouting, throwing teacups about, or was he just a case of tomorrow's another day, training tomorrow? What did your experiences sort of tell you from that sort of situation?
Well, Eddie McCready he'd build you up straight away. He was the one that would build you up and say, come on, we're better than that. We'll be fine next week. We'll sort it out. He was great. Ron Surt was another one who was a fantastic man to have around the dressing room. One of my experiences in the dressing room with the manager was when I was at if I can say it's Queen's Park Rangers with Jim Smith. He used to have a vein in his head that when he was annoyed, it was like the M1. And I saw many a teacup, many a thing thrown across the room. He was unbelievable. And I'll never forget, we conceded a goal in the last minute against, I think it was Coventry. And he came into the dressing room and he had blood all over running down his head. And I thought, what on earth? And evidently, when they scored, he got up in the dugout and hit his head on the roof of the dugout. And guys, but he was honestly at half time. If we were getting stuffed at half time, a lot of the players would put their clothes in the shower room so they wouldn't be covered in tea and whatever he threw at the walls. It was So we had a few of those, but no, I don't think that gets you anywhere. I think you've got to be calm. You've got to believe in what you're doing. You've got to get over to the players that believe, because you've got to keep that together. It's no good all of a sudden the manager becoming separated from the players and the players blaming the manager and the manager blaming, because I've been in dressing rooms with that, and it's a horrible situation. And you just got to remain strong, and your leaders also have a job to do off the park. But I thought yesterday was just a pride, and I was even proud of, because I think Fernandinho should have got sent off.
Yes. Yeah. I wasn't going to mention it because when I remember watching it sort of at the time, and I just thought, how are you not either got a second yellow? Because there was a few moments where it was more than two occasions he should have got a booking, and I just thought Mike Dean completely didn't see it. But I've just thought, obviously, you might mention it, the slight touch on Mason Mount's face with the boot. I was quite surprised VAR didn't look at that myself.
Yeah, I know. Do you know what I'm really surprised about is that I thought that was deliberate, and I got to say I was chuffed with Mason Mount, because it had been one of their players. They'd have been rolling around like making it to be worse than what it was. But I think he kept him on then. I really did, because he acted like a man. And then about 2 minutes later, he's actually taken the ball past. He's got control of the ball, and Fernandinho has gone in with the most dangerous tackle. And the referee said play on. But the fact is, it was a dangerous tackle, and I think he should have got sent off. And that might have made our job a little bit easier. But
well, I think that had a good effect on us, because as the game wore on, Mount was getting better, as the game grew, and it wasn't just Fernandinho, they looked tired.
Yeah.
Now, again, good time to probably plan because of Dortmund and other games as well. But yeah, that for me, that was very significant. The fact that, I thought City should have been down for 10, but the reaction from Mount, if it was, as you say, somebody else, maybe a player from overseas or perhaps an Englishman that's got a bit of a reputation, then it would have probably led to something else. But Mount's reaction, I thought, was superb. You're definitely right there.
And what Mason's got to realise is when you become a good player, you'll get a Fernandinho every week trying to kick you and trying to intimidate you. And he didn't let him get to him at all. And I thought outplayed. I thought he was brilliant. He went past him so many times yesterday. Again, that was great to see.
Two players that I'd like to talk about with you, Steve, if I can. One of them you mentioned, about Mount being kicked, but obviously midweek Christian Pulisic played against Porto, and he must have bruises from shin to shin. The amount of kicking he received against Porto was quite shocking, really. But I was surprised he didn't start. But then again, rotation and keeping players fresh, I thought was obviously key. But I was surprised Christian didn't start. He
was injured, Keith, I think. He was injured.
He came on sort of later on, didn't he? He came on sort of later in the second half. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And he scored a goal, didn't he? He went past a few players.
He scored, and it was sort of just marginally offside, but
he's beginning to hit form a little bit, isn't he? He went off a little bit. Now he's coming back, and he seems to be playing with a lot more confidence. And his game is running at players and taking players on. And all of a sudden he's got this reboot, if you like, and he's doing that now, and he looks a player.
He got a confidence boost against Palace with his goals. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. One player who I'm suspecting would probably need a huge confidence boost, but probably he ain't going to get it from Thomas Tuchel, is Tammy Abraham. He was left out of the actual squad yesterday, which many people were caught off guard with that. Hasn't played many games under Tuchel recently. I think his last start was against Barnsley in the FA Cup earlier on. There's talk about him leaving. He's been with Chelsea since he was a kid, basically. The earlier sort of reports are that Leicester City allegedly looking at him at the moment. There's other talk about West Ham and Aston Villa. Why do you think, looking at the fact that Tuchel more specifically, would rather play Havertz as a striker than Tammy? Is it a case of Tammy might need to leave to further his career, or should Tammy stay? And if Chelsea are to sell him, what would be your asking price for him?
Well, I've always looked at Tammy, and I've always thought this, and I might get shouted down, but I think Tammy scores 1 goal in 3 chances. And as a top player, you've got to score 2 goals in 3 chances. And I've always felt, and sometimes when you're at a big club and you're playing with the players that you're playing with, and the amount of transfer money that is being spent, you don't quite get the respect that sometimes you deserve, because you've come through and you have to earn that respect. Mason's earned that respect. He's done it through week in, week out, being consistent. Tammy hasn't. There are times he gets a bit bullied. There are times where he scored some great goals. But to me, if I was Chelsea, I'd be looking to get that big signing. And what I do for Tammy's future is to let him go at this stage, so that he can play week in, week out. And because him being out the squad and in the reserves is doing him no good at all. No good at all. And if you look at clubs like, Aston Villa, who else would do? Even Leicester, teams like that, I think he would have a future with, and he could play more and learn his trade more. Because this, someone said to me once, and it was when a new manager joined, and I can't remember what club I was at. How do you feel if he doesn't fancy you? What are you going to do? And it's true. If a manager comes in and doesn't fancy you, and he's proved it that he doesn't, because he's not even having him in the squad, then that's the time to move on and rebuild your career elsewhere.
Because of that, when a new manager comes in, there have been stories, and whether or not it happens nowadays, I don't know. But there's been times when people have told me stories that new managers come in, player perhaps doesn't get on with that particular manager, and the player's gone, well, I'm going to be here longer than you're going to be here. And that does seem to be the case. Some players who are not favoured don't leave the club because of either their wages are too high or transfer fee could be too much, and they do end up staying more than the coach. And as you say, I think Tammy, for his own benefit, if he's not going to get a start, I mean, even Olivier Giroud seems to be frozen out of the team now. Giroud was influential in the early part of the season, and when Tuchel first came in, Giroud was still playing a little bit, but not now. Again, these players, you've got to look at it, especially with Tammy, with his age. He has to, if it's going to be the case where Chelsea might get another striker in, and he might see Havertz as maybe a backup option as a false 9, but obviously play him more deeper, he might have to sell Tammy, and Tammy might have to look at it and go, maybe I should leave. I
know what I'd do. I'd put him in the Haaland deal to Borussia Dortmund.
That would be interesting.
I'd say to him, you look at the young English players that have gone to Germany and made a real reputation. You've got an opportunity here. And Bayern Munich, because Borussia Dortmund, because they bought a load of English players, and they've been success. They've had a great deal of success with young English players. Tammy might fit the bill, and they might take the chance. And you could probably put him in there at 12 million quid, 14 million quid.
Potentially. Obviously, with Tammy's omission from the squad, and you've got that sort of selection there, Steve, if you was in charge of Chelsea, who would be in your front three?
In my front three? What, if from the players we have?
From the players we have at the moment, so from now until the end of the season, we're fighting on to try and get into the Champions League places. We've got the FA Cup final. We've got Real Madrid coming up. Who would be your strongest three out of the players we've got?
Well, I'd play Havertz as a. I think he can play as a 10. I think that's his best position. He's got to be allowed to now. Then that puts you've got Mason, who loves playing in that position, and you can't have too many attacking options here. But I would say Pulisic is best. Werner for his endeavour and pace, and Zilic. The way he played yesterday, I'd have those. Those would be my front three. And how do you play that? You play, Werner caused lots of problems wide. I would love him to cause problems up the middle and get a couple of goals. Because the thing that concerns me a little bit, and I was so pleased when that final whistle went, was if they'd have equalised in the last 10 minutes, who would have been favourites to have gone on and won that game? And I think it would have been Man City. But when you go over the game, we should have been 2 up, 3 up. We should have been. And we didn't take our chances. So that's, to me, the only little thing is, has any threesome up front got the ability to score the goals that we need? Rather than winning games 2-1, 1-0, when we should win the game 2 or 3 and enjoy the last 15 minutes.
Good point.
Yeah.
There's a good point. We're looking at Chelsea this season, and many fans are looking at it now. FA Cup final, Leicester or Southampton. I think a few fans who I've sort of spoken to this morning, and from what I've read, perhaps being a little bit overconfident because it's Leicester or Southampton, whereas, if it was against City or Liverpool, it might be a bit different. But we've been to the FA Cup final and lost before, so I'm not going to sort of take it for granted. Whoever we play, it's going to be a tough game. But Steve, this little question, because a friend of mine actually asked me this morning, and I did answer it, and he was quite surprised with my answer. If you had to choose out of the two, what would you pick? A top 4 place but no trophies, or 5th and the FA Cup? What would be your choice?
If I was Chelsea manager,
Chelsea manager or as a fan?
If I was Chelsea manager, I'd go for what would make the most money for Mr. Abramovich. And I think you'll find that's in the top 4. Because I think, unfortunately, winning the FA Cup isn't like what it used to be. The whole thing has become Champions League. If you said to the people that ran Tottenham, do you want to win the Carabao Cup or would you rather stay in the top 4? It would always be top 4. Always be top 4 because that sets you apart and you become the elite part of, if you like, European football.
Mentioned about the FA Cup and how it's changed. Again, even when the final whistle came yesterday, you saw certain players on the floor, and it reminded me of semi-finals and finals gone by. Especially when I was growing up watching football in the 90s, you'd see it at semi-finals at Wembley. Steve, what was your memories of the FA Cup, either as a supporter or as a player? Have you got any sort of great memories of the Cup that you could share?
I went to Wembley in 1970. It was my first ever cup final that I'd went to.
Oh, you went to the game between Chelsea and Leeds?
I did, yes. And,
fantastic.
I was going there to observe a pristine Wembley Stadium, and the pitch was like a ploughed farmer's field where the Horse of the Year show had completely mucked it up. And it was just, the first thing was the unbelievable smell of the hot dogs and the burgers walking up Wembley Way, and the amount of people that were there and the atmosphere that was there. It was absolutely incredible. And it's funny because there was I read something about the 2 Chelsea Leeds games in the cup final were perceived to be the 2 dirtiest games ever recorded. And a referee from today's watched the match and said, "Would you book him for that? Would you?" And it worked out there'd be 4 players left on the pitch after the game, and that was 2 goalkeepers. It was the most physical game, and it was incredible. And Hutch, God rest his soul, and a great mate, scored the equaliser, and it was fantastic. It was a fantastic day. And when we won I went up as a guest of Chelsea to the replay, and it was fantastic. It was just the most incredible day. But I used to, as a kid, love it when, it was like I was like in a candy shop when you turn on the TV at 9 o'clock in the morning and the build-up had started. They were showing the old games and it was just incredible. The whole day was one of the greatest days of the year. And we've lost that a little bit. The fact that we have it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, it's not tradition.
I believe this year's final is going to be at around 5:30 UK time as well, which, as you say, it does sort of put a dampener on it because, again, certain people of certain generations have always seen the FA Cup final at 3 o'clock, and you get the pomp and ceremony beforehand. I mean, I was a bit sort of too young to see it, but I've seen clips of the cup final preview on Saints and Greavesy. When they would sort of be in the same hotel as some of the teams, and they're interviewing them while they're having breakfast.
Absolutely, that's when it all started. And there'd be things where they had interviews with the wives
Yes.
about what it meant to them. It was like, and it was this build up all the way through, and it was an incredible day. And we've lost something there. But listen, as I said to you before, football has evolved. It's evolved to it's become all about money, isn't it? That's why they will look at the best time that they can get advertising in breaks when they can maximise the money. It's all about money. All those sort of, I don't know, things that we had way back were just tradition, and money didn't play that big a part in it. But now it's all become about money. And
it's become very corporate.
Yes, but they need it to be to pay the players. Some of the wages and salaries of players these days, God, you've got to have a lot of money to pay instead of stay. So they've got to maximise it.
Yeah, I think we should see tonight. Obviously, as we're recording, it's on a Sunday, so we've got Leicester, Southampton to come. Steve, just quickly before we sort of discuss from a different sort of concept of a cup semi-final, who would you take in the final, Leicester or Southampton?
Well, Ralph, I'll try and pronounce his. No, I won't try and pronounce his surname. But I think anyone that has gone through what he's gone to lose a couple of games 9-0 and get over it and still be there and still, and they've had a very good cup run. They've had a hard cup run and they've come through it. And Southampton, I don't know. I would like to see an all Southern thing, and it might be nice
Southern
for the
final.
Yeah, for the Southampton fans who had to endure quite a lot of pain over the last. It might be nice for them to have a good day out. And I said that man has never shirked an interview. These teams have got beaten 9-0 twice. It must have been a nightmare for him, but he's never shirked anything, and he's been, I think, a good manager for them. But Brendan's done a fantastic job, and he plays football the right way. He does play football the right way, and he's a very well-respected person who I know within football said to me that it wouldn't surprise him if Gareth gets a football club that England wouldn't appoint Brendan Rodgers as the England manager. And I thought about it. I said, well, and when you look at it, he spent all his life in England. He coaches the right way. Players like him an awful lot. So who's to say?
It could happen.
That was quite high up, actually.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I'll tell you what it does. I think it makes, and the only thing I'll say, I played in the cup final and we beaten Liverpool in the semi-final of the cup, and on home and away, and we climbed Everest We to win that, and they were European champions, and we drew 2-2 at Anfield, going down twice. So we were 1-0 down, 2-1 down, and we got back. We kept coming back, and we went through 3-2 on aggregate. Now, what gets in your psyche is you almost think you deserve to win the cup because you've beaten a little bit like the England rugby team when they beat New Zealand in the semi-final, and you think, well, England have won the world; they win the World Cup. Anything in a final of anything you do never comes easy, and we've got to be switched on from the first whistle and go about our business exactly the same respects as what we did yesterday.
Definitely. Chelsea in the FA Cup final once again, 15th of May, round of 5, 5:30 kickoff. Whoever we face, it's going to be a tough game, but we do fancy our chances, and it's a good chance for Thomas Tuchel to get a trophy and cement his position as Chelsea manager, and it'll be a great for certain players as well. Mason Mount getting a senior trophy as well. That will definitely help. Steve, while we have you on the Blue Day podcast for this week, obviously, as it's FA Cup semi-final weekend, not many people may know this, but you was obviously a coach abroad as well, and you had some moments in cup games, especially winning trophies as well. So I just want to sort of, if I can, get a few minutes of your time to discuss like the mindset. So we've discussed obviously the mindset as a player when it comes to the cup, but what is it like as a coach? So just to sort of start off, when you've been in that situation of a cup semi-final, what's going through your head on the day of the game? Are you sort of perhaps thinking of certain tactics on the day, or is a lot of it all done the day or 2 days prior, and it's just waiting for the game to start?
Well, again, one of the hard things that is different today with what's going on in the world is you don't really get the time now, do you? You had a Champions League game this week. You before you know where you are, you've given the players probably a day off, and you've probably had 1 day's training with them, and so he's done ever so well. I think what it's all about is meticulous planning. You get in your mind your tactics that you think can win the game. You get it over to the players what you want, and the final ingredient is you hope they believe in it. And you might believe in it, but players might not. When Terry Venables was my manager, we played West Brom in the semi-final of the FA Cup, and he felt that the strength of West Brom was Weil and Robertson, and he went through a week of training playing Clive Allen really deep. He pushed Simon Stainrod out to the left and Mike Flanagan out to the right, and he felt that because they were basic centre-backs that had loved to head the ball and kick the ball, that would be the way, because we'd have extra men all over the park. And the players did buy into it until probably Wednesday, Thursday, and then they thought, well, we got to do it. So they started to really sort of buy into it. And we won 1-0. And all I can remember is the first 5-6 minutes of the game, you had Weil and Robertson saying, who do I pick up? What am I? And it worked like a dream. Now, as a manager, when you do something like that and your tactics have worked, and you're in the final of the FA Cup, or you've won the final of the FA Cup, it's as good a feeling as playing in a final, because it's your tactics, your nous that has created the opportunity. It's a great feeling. It really is a great feeling. And the manager would have gone back, or the coach would have gone back last night with a big smile on his face, thinking, I've done a good job there.
When it sort of came to the semi-final, and again, obviously, at this stage, teams like Chelsea are playing every 3 to 4 days. But when it came to a semi-final, when would a coach perhaps have the lineup drawn out in his head? Would it be, might sound crazy, but would it be on the day of the game? Would it be a day before, or would it actually be maybe before the previous game, that he would maybe rest players in the league game beforehand, before the semi-final. Sort of from your experiences, what would you've seen as a coach or as a player certain managers do when it came to a build-up to an important game like this?
Basically, you know your best team. You know your best team. It's a little bit like Tottenham. Is their best team with Kane or without Kane? Well, it's obviously with Kane, but the truth of the matter is he might not be there on the final on Sunday with his ankle injury. Hope he is, bless him. But barring from injuries, you have a very, very good idea and you've got to bear in mind when you're in the semi-final, you're not going to have any problems with players training hard and working hard because they all want to play. But deep down, you'll always know your best 11. Always. And it's, I think that, in the little bit of success I had in Malaysia and Singapore is, your best 11 and you trust them and you have faith in them. And that's the only way I get. And he's beginning now to get his best 11. He will know. He'll be going through it now and he'll be thinking, he'll be thinking about the games and he will know. And barring injuries and barring, something happening, he'll pick that team in a formation because the great thing is Chelsea aren't as rigid in positions. They've got players that can play anywhere. They're natural, gifted footballers. So therefore they can play anywhere. So, but he'll know the players he wants.
And I'm guessing sort of when you look at how Thomas Tuchel could approach it, he will obviously speak after the semi-final victory and, you're going to the final. He'd obviously maybe speak to players that he knows in his head would start and go, right, you're going to be in the final no matter what. Similar to the story that I heard when it came to Euro 96. Alan Shearer didn't score an international goal for nearly 2 years. And then when it came to the tournament, Terry Venables, who you know quite well, just said to Alan, no, you are my number 9. You are going to be my centre forward. And that helped. Does that sort of still come into play with managers and players?
Yeah, it does, Keith. You players need you to have faith in them. They need you to have faith in them, and that feeling that your manager rates you is a fantastic feeling. And the players will know. The players will know. I would never name a team before Thursday, but the week, even for a cup final, I'd always. But the week you have to let them know what the team is without announcing it, doing team play and set plays and getting yourself ready. So a football team will have a good idea what the starting 11 is, without doubt.
And again, as you say, barring any injuries or even any suspensions as well. When you was in Malaysia and Singapore, wasn't it, Steve? Sorry. When you was in them sort of countries and you was able to be quite successful there, what sort of was going through your mind when obviously the referee blew the whistle and it was a case of, yes, we are now in the final and fans obviously going crazy, the players sort of being jubilant. When you was in that particular situation, what was going through your mind?
No, I think that the thing is, number one, you're pleased for the players. They've put a shift in, they've worked hard. You're pleased for them, but I also knew where I was at Selangor in Malaysia, was they expected to win those cups. They expected, and there was, the final was played in front of 108,000 people, and it was pressure. But when you win, and I went out to my room because over there you can't drink a glass of lager, and you have to have orange juice and birthday cake. So I had a couple of beers in the fridge, and I sat in my room drinking a nice lager. And it was one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life. It was a fantastic sense of achievement. It's lovely. And I hope that Thomas is in some hotel room somewhere feeling like that after the European Cup final, the Champions League. That'd be great.
Let's hope. It could very well happen. Steve, just want to say thank you very much for your insight, when it comes to cup football, especially with the triumph of the semi-finals as a coach and a player. And thank you obviously for your time today. I do appreciate it. So in regards to the Blue Day podcast coming up, hopefully we will get Mr. Steve Wicks back on the show, soon. We can obviously to talk about more of our beloved Chelsea. But what we have coming up as well, the next player interview we have one Clive Wilson that's going to be on the show very soon. Steve, you played with Clive a couple of times, didn't you, in your later stages at Chelsea? Have you got any sort of stories you can quickly share with us about the Clive Wilson?
Very, very good player. Very good player, Clive. And a great lad. A super lad. Always laughing, joking. Soul of the party. He's a good lad. And it was as I said, it was a hard time in those times. He was new to the club and things were he'd probably tell you, or he'd probably keep quiet. I'm not sure what he'd do, but he was a good lad and an extremely good footballer. Great left foot.
Hopefully, I was going to say, just hopefully he will tell his side of the story as well from that particular season that you mentioned when we had the interview with you, and obviously when we spoke to Kevin Wilson as well. But Clive Wilson's going to be on the show coming up this week. We will hopefully be back with another sort of review of Chelsea very, very soon. And also we will be announcing quite shortly of a special show that we are planning to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Chelsea winning the Cup Winners' Cup final in 1971 against Real Madrid. Do you remember that occasion of 1971?
Well, that was the year I signed for Chelsea, and they were European, and it was great. It was a fantastic time to join Chelsea because they'd won the FA Cup in '70 and the Cup Winners' Cup in '72, and they had a great side. And they'd signed Keith Weller and people were looking, saying, "Cool, this is going to be some side now." And I think we signed Chris Garland as well. And it was. Everyone thought this is it. Chelsea are going to take off, and then we had a habit in those days of shooting ourselves in the foot sometimes.
Yes, I think obviously certain people had other ideas in regards to what they saw Chelsea could be, years after being successful. But that's all going to be coming up on the Blue Day podcast. If you want to find us on YouTube, feel free. We've got some old player interviews that we have with other ex-Chelsea players to find. Instagram as well. We'll sort of give you plenty of news and notes on there. And also find us on Facebook, where we've also got some fantastic pictures as well from Chelsea from days gone by. But I have been Keith Lawrence. Thank you again for Steve Wicks for his fantastic input as always. Stay safe and carefree. Chelsea!
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.